What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with an NBA podcast crossover, which means it's featuring Mort Jensen of the NBA podcast fame, of Yahoo Sports fame, of OnlyFans, celebrity, notoriety, infamy, and also of Forbes fame. I can't believe I forgot about that one, but really OnlyFans is more important. We're taking a break from single team, single topic deep dives to do something no one else has ever done, as Mort was so kind enough to point out to me. Once again, just like we went through restricted free agents the other day, we're going to talk about teams. We were each limited to picking. We're going to pick three. We don't know who the other team is picking, so we need other person's picking. So there will need to be alternates. We're going to try and identify teams that could. These aren't necessarily predictions, though in some case they would, but teams that could surprise us, and that could be, as Mort was kind enough to remind me before we hopped on, good or bad surprise. So disappointments, pleasant surprises, unpleasant surprises, however you want to frame it. That's what we're going to tackle back and forth. We don't know what the other person's going to come up with. It's going to be absolute insanity as usual. But first and foremost, everyone pouring one out for Mort, who's powering through what sounds like the flu or just some type of sickness. He's ready to narrate pornos, folks. Mort, how are you doing?
Well, I'm not doing fantastic, sir. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Outside of having my annual virus or whatever the hell that I caught.
Oh, annual. I thought you said something else. I apologize.
No, that's for later.
Is just
that's for later, honey. Don't worry. Yeah. That's for later. But I do always appreciate that when I'm sick, I have my sexy Mort voice going. So, and I will say that a couple years ago, my wife was like, could you just keep that around? Like, could you just somehow turn that into a staple? I don't want all the sickness. I don't want all the snot coming out of you, but the voice, I could get used to that. So
she just wants you to basically lick public toilet seats just to ensure that she doesn't want. She says she doesn't want the germs.
That doesn't work. I do that every day, regardless. Now, that doesn't work. So.
Well, we appreciate you being here so that you can power through this exercise. Do you have any notes about how you approach this before we get started?
Yes. I mean, look, obviously this is focusing on teams and not players, but I decided to give the rosters a thorough look and try to, what's the word? Not predict, but try to envision where things could go wrong and where things could go really okay. And it's basically off that. A lot of it is shooting variance. I'm not going to lie to you. That a lot of that came down to that.
So the thing that I struggle with for this exercise is I'm looking at it mostly from my perspective or what I think might be a consensus perspective rather than what does this team think about itself? And I'll throw out a team as an example here. I apologize if it spoils one for you, but the Pelicans, and I don't mean to pile on, clearly think that they're going to be contending for something or going to be good right away. Otherwise, why do you go get Derek Queen? I don't think they're going to be good right away. And so when they invariably finish 11th or 12th or 13th in the Western Conference, that's not going to surprise me.
Right. And that's the way I looked at it as well. I mean, I just didn't lean into anything obvious. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm actually gonna go to my first one. I actually have the Bulls as a team that could be surprising in a positive sense because while, look, their process and their roster construction philosophy is horrendous, I actually do like a lot of the components that they do have on the roster. I think Zach Collins has historically been pretty underrated. I think Kevin Huerter is someone who offers so much volume three-point shooting and a lot of spacing gravity. If they hang on to Kobe White, he's entering his prime years. There's a chance he could be an all-star caliber player, if not, a surefire all-star. I think with more minutes for Jalen Smith, presumably, that's going to be a good thing. They have Ayo Dosunmu, who we talked about. Matas Bucelas looked really good last year. There's a lot of reason to believe he's going to take a step up. Trey Jones is one of those players who kind of flies under the radar. So, again, I don't buy the Bulls as a team for the future in any sense of the word, but I do think the parts that they do have can come together on a level where by the end of the season, they might actually be in that top 6 playoff hunt. Not saying they will, and I think that's because, again, everything can happen, but it is the East, and a lot of teams are basically just mailing it in this year. So I'm just actually going to say the Bulls could be a surprise, but through no sheer fault, or so to speak, of their own. They'll just run ass backwards into it.
Because I was going to ask you, what does a surprise look like for them? Because they're aiming for like that 37 to 42 win sweet spot. And so what is the ceiling on that type of a team? Like that would be
that's
like you're
really
thinking
good.
they could get to 45 or something?
Yeah, see, I actually didn't look at it through like wins. I looked at it through seeds.
Well, they're the quintessential like mid team. So I think that's why the wins come into play, to where it's like, oh, if you have the Wizards winning, let's say like 12 games, and you think that they could win 30, it's just like it's easier to talk about like a wider range of that. But the Bulls, like, they're the definition of middling.
Well, they won 39 games last year. I would not be surprised if they had like 42, 43, maybe even 44. Again, it's not going to take them anywhere, ultimately speaking, because they still lack that top tier guy. I'm not a big believer in them being able to retain Kobe White past next season either. So, but this could be the last gasp of this current iteration of the Bulls, because you also have Zach Collins, who goes into a contract year. I think Kevin Huerter's in a contract year as well. So I'm just assuming a lot of these guys are going to step up. Now, of course, there's also Nikola Vucevic. He's played one game so far at Eurobasket where he looked really good offensively and on the glass. Defensively, though, oh my God, Dan, it looked horrendous. He was like 2 or 3 steps slow on every possession. I could be a little concerned that for him specifically, this might be, quote unquote, the decline year, especially defensively. But that's almost the beauty of it, because if that means less Vooch, it presumably means more Zach Collins. It means more Jalen Smith, 2 options I would frankly prefer for the Bulls if they play up tempo. So I just think they have a lot of those safeguards in place. So it's interesting. Like I don't necessarily think that I would be willing to write this in stone. I could just see a scenario where, what do you call the sum of all their parts? Just make it up.
There's the only other thing I have to add on them is, I think what would make me reticent to pick them is the other thing we almost have to factor in is what if these teams, I guess because it's the Bulls, you don't have to factor this in, but what if these teams decide to steer out, or steer in rather, to a skid, to where if the Bulls are like, we're kind of too good, but we're not good enough, or someone comes along with a Kobe White offer with him entering free agency, do we pounce on it? I guess because you picked the Bulls, though, it's pretty safe to say they won't do that. That's the good thing about the Bulls. So my pick is going to be a team that I think has been getting shit on a lot because I think people don't believe their roster makes sense, which to some extent is fair. The Toronto Raptors, for me, they just have a lot of guys. And this is something that Grant and I had talked about last offseason when we were discussing the Portland Trailblazers. And it did take a while, but things started to coalesce for them. It didn't seem like everyone fit together. And Toronto is in a similar boat, to where, okay, RJ Barrett and Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes, and then what's happening? They have all these bigs and fours that can't really shoot. How does Jakob Poeltl factor into it all? I feel like in the minutes that their core guys have played together over the past 2 seasons, it's a season and change. There hasn't been a lot of it because of injuries for the most part. They've absolutely annihilated opponents. And I isolate it even further because I do think that there's something to be said about RJ Barrett being the odd man out here. And so in the time that Emmanuel Quickley, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl have logged without RJ Barrett over the past 2 seasons, the Raptors are a plus 8.7 points per 100 possessions with an offensive rating that's like close to 124. And they're not shooting threes that well during these minutes, 36.7%. Now they're shooting like 60 crazy percent on twos, 60% on twos. What's really interesting is now you put Brandon Ingram in RJ Barrett's place here. Brandon Ingram's a better 3-point shooter. Yes. That's something that you could bank on. I think RJ Barrett's better at moving off the ball right now, but RJ Barrett didn't really start moving off the ball or operating with these heads of steam in transition with the Knicks and some of those second units, sure. But like RJ Barrett is used differently in Toronto than the way he was from New York.
Mhm.
I don't see anything about Brandon Ingram, not as much. Like RJ Barrett has more of that like knife through butter movement away from the ball, sure. You can use Brandon Ingram, I think, in a lot of the same ways. And I think you could argue that Brandon Ingram coming to the Raptors is better as a passer and a shooter than RJ Barrett was coming to the Raptors when he did. Now, you could talk about the passing after the season, especially to start, that RJ had last year. So you've upgraded the talent in that spot. And if you just get a hit from anywhere else, maybe Grady Dick takes another lead. He started off the season really well. Or maybe you get something like Ochai Agbaji just like had a really good year. He continues to shoot the 3-ball well. Or maybe you even futz and fiddle your guy Mamu, someone who could space the floor at the 5 spot. Maybe you see what that looks like instead of Pirtle. But just go through the depth chart too. They have a lot of dudes that will be dogs on defense. I think Scotty Barnes is good there. Emmanuel Quickley has not been good defensively in Toronto. I think he has more to offer. I just think the stop and start nature of what he's been in terms of availability has hurt him. Jamal Shed, Akbaji is another one. If you get any minutes from Mobo or Colin Murray Boyles, like those are guys that I think, especially Colin Murray Boyles, if you told me Colin Murray Boyles played 30 minutes a game, I'm not saying he will, I might, like he could make an all-defense team. That's how good I think he might be out of the gate. So they just have a lot of guys. They're not all perfect fitting, but like it doesn't always need to be perfect fitting. This isn't, stars have a way of figuring it out, but sometimes you're just so deep and have so much actual positive NBA talent that you will figure it out. And I also kind of think we saw this for stages last year. Like even if the offense is choppy, I really do look at this team as one that could be a gangbuster on the defensive end as well. Like they're young, they can play fast, but also they could force a bunch of turnovers if they want to go that aggressive route, get out and transition them. That helps your offense. So I look at the Raptors as, I'm not saying they'll be a top 4 seed in the East, but if we just kind of look back and see that the Raptors won 45 games, it wouldn't shock me. But I think that they're built to shock in general.
I love that inclusion. And I think it's pretty interesting that we started with the Bulls and then the Raptors because I just wrote a piece about the Raptors, specifically RJ Barrett over at Forbes, in terms of like they can probably get to a new level if they pivot off RJ because they need a guard. And there is a world wherein a deal centered around RJ Barrett and Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic kind of makes sense if you want to optimize like the floor spacing in Toronto. Now, where it gets tricky, and I didn't mention this in the piece, I didn't even include Vucevic. I took this from a Toronto perspective. Like a Kobe White type of player there would be beautiful for them, a guy who can play a lot off the ball. But like if they are looking at 40, 45 wins, but they want to make that leap, like they think near the trade deadline that they're like, okay, if we get Barrett out of town, if we make that push for Kobe and Vooch, maybe that's the ticket to actually get into the playoffs fully fledged. Would you even be willing to like dangle Colin Murray Boyles in those trade talks to get those guys in? Because like if I had Kobe on a longer deal, I would, but since I don't, I probably wouldn't.
I probably wouldn't either, just because you do get into a situation where, yes, they could play together, but how much money are you going to want committed to Emmanuel Quickley and Kobe White long term, especially after having paid Barnes and Ingram? So that I probably wouldn't include Colin. I mean, maybe if the Bulls are sending out a pick or something in that scenario, or you're getting Ayo Dosunmu as well, but he's also someone who's going to be up for
he also
a new
needs
deal.
He needs a new deal as well. Vooch needs a new deal, but I mean, right, you can get him on the cheap, right? But it's interesting. I think those two are going to be potential trade partners if we're wrong about them not being surprises.
Yeah, I finding an RJ Barrett team is tough. I've thought about Charlotte a little bit because they have like not a ton of wings, but I don't know who are they giving you Colin Sexton? That makes your team a little smaller, does help the shooting. He's an expiring contract. I don't know which side would have interest in that, but finding an RJ Barrett team is
the
tough.
archetype.
Like,
it's the archetype that's difficult.
I thought about Washington until they traded for Cam Whitmore. Now it's like, okay, well, no, it doesn't need to be. It definitely doesn't need to be Washington. Who's your next team, sir?
Well, so by definition, I have to go Spurs, positive in a positive light, obviously, and that is because I'm going out on a limb, Dan, and I'm being even more of an idiot than usual. I think that the Spurs are going to win 50 plus games, and I think Victor Wembanyama is going to be the youngest MVP in league history.
I think so. This is a good team to pick because I had them as a team that's going to be an unpleasant surprise, like to clock. So, like, this is a great discussion to have. I kind of just feel like we're getting ahead of our skis here. I think they won the minutes with Wemby last year on the court. They're like almost a +4. They have more talent objectively on the roster.
Right.
But you also have two major young guards in Steph Castle and Dylan Harper. And I know that Spurs fans tend to default that it's just all going to work out right away. I'm not saying it's not all going to work out, that the dynamic will never work out, but right away? Like, are you just, if they're going to be good, so I'll start there. If you think that's going to happen, do you think that Dylan Harper then is not really going to play a major role for this team, or you just expect him to be really good off rip?
I off rip, first and foremost. I love his game. I think he is an NBA ready player, both physically and the game and like the IQ wise. Like the shooting is a legit question mark, and I'm not trying to downplay that. I think the shooting concerns are greater with Castle than Harper, though. Like, I think we've done the Spurs a bit of a disservice by going into this, everyone, and saying, oh, well, Castle and Harper are both bad shooters, where this is partially true, but one is further ahead than the other. I think that's fair to say.
Again, also, the Harper stuff, I know what the percentages are, but now after getting a chance to see him and the way he moves in Summer League, I said this, like, I'm just not worried about that dude as a shooter long term. And so it's not on a level of, I know some people provide pushback on, Steph Castle will eventually be a good shooter. That's the guy to talk about. I think that's the right guy. Like Harper, I'm just not really worried about as an off-ball or on-ball shooter.
Exactly. And I think if he comes in and pops, which I think, then Castle might be a little bit of a luxury item where he's nice to have, not need to have. So, like, whatever he gives you, you can sort of plug him in where he's necessary. Like, he's a big dude. Are we saying that you can't put Castle at the 3 occasionally to get a little bit more playmaking and shooting in the backcourt? I'm just not ruling that out. But for me, obviously, when I have Wemby as the MVP here, which is the real thing, is I think this is going to be like a superhuman year from him. And I think De'Aaron Fox is, I don't like his contract. I've said as much. But that doesn't mean De'Aaron Fox isn't damn good. Like, him pushing the tempo, him just getting everyone moving. We know Wemby is able to play with quick guards. We've seen that both at the NBA level. We've seen it in the international level as well. Like, this is a dude who understands, if the guards are actually running and pushing, I need to make myself available constantly, be that as a trailing 3-point shooter, be that as a lob threat, hell, be it as a open mid-range guy. Like, he does not look at the game as he does have an analytical approach, but he's not someone who will not take an open mid-range. You know what I mean? Like, he understands the value of an open shot, whether it's a 3 or mid or whatever. And so he won't discriminate. That was the word I was looking for. He won't discriminate shots. And now you also add in Vassell, who I think he had a down year. I think there's a perfectly reasonable expectation for him to bounce back a little bit. We know Harrison Barnes is efficient. We know he takes a lot of threes. We know he scores a lot at the rim. We know he's efficient. At the same time, I also don't think they're done. I don't assume that they're going to finish the year with the roster that they have now. 24.5, I think, million in backup centers in shape of Kelly Olynyk and Luke Kornet. That, to me, is just like such a flag that something is going down before the trade deadline. Like, there's definitely a deal to be found there. And if they're on the right track by December, January, whatever, I assume that they're going to field some calls and try to make a sort of push in, not like all the chips, but some of them, to make them better right off the bat. I also think they have some depth, and I think that flies a little bit under the radar. I know you have mentioned a lot, and not inaccurately, the spacing issues and like where is the shooting going to come from. But there are players on this roster who we always tend to forget about, like Julian Champagny. Legitimately a rotation guy. He started for him a lot last year at $3 million, by the way. Major bargain. No one seems to.
Yeah, the Champagnes are out here just getting robbed.
They are really good. Both of them are really good.
I've already put this out there. I proposed it to. I'm already trying to get Justin Champagnie to the Knicks somehow
Yeah.
because the Wizards just have too many wings right
Yeah.
now. Justin Champagnie to the Knicks. Somebody make it happen.
He's so good, and he's like a much better rebounder than his brother, where his brother's a little bit more of like a finesse shooter. It's interesting how different their play style actually is, and ironically, they'd go great together on the floor because Champagnie is more for like 3-2, or so both Champagnie, like Julian is more of a two, like a 3-2, and Justin's more of a 3-4. Like they could actually play together, but yeah, no, I think this is going to be like a major Wemby year. Like we're talking close to 30 points. We're probably talking 12, 13 rebounds, 4 blocks, if efficiency through the roof. I think this year 3 Wemby could be just an absolute monster. And like, how the hell do you stop him?
And look, I have no pushback for any of the. If you tell me that Victor Wembanyama is going to play in 65 plus games, there's nothing you could tell me about him or the Spurs that that's never going to happen.
Right.
But he defies logic. I think the bar for them to surprise is just too high because I think too many people are expecting, and that's why I would have them as a potential disappointment. I think too many people fall into your camp to where like, no, this is a team they're ready to win 50 games, maybe win a top 4 seed in the and like. By you saying he's going to win MVP, I would say you're banking on them being no lower than 4th in the West, if you're going to say that.
Yeah, then that's probably more than 50. Then we're probably looking at 55.
Right. And just, when you're talking about, okay, OKC and Houston and Denver, you love the Clippers, there's the Timberwolves, the Lakers are looming. It's a tall order. So I just think that this is, to me, Wembanyama specifically, no. I don't think there's a rush to coordinate. Put the fucking crown on him. I'm there. But I think the Spurs as a team, and one of the things that does concern me is that they can get to some nasty defensive combinations. But it's not just about the 3 guard stuff on offense for me. They seem very dependent on their floor spacing coming from the front court right now. Their best shooters are Victor Wembanyama, Kelly Olynyk, Devin Vassell, Harrison Barnes. Like a lot of those names are coming at the 4, at that 4 or the 5 at that point. And then I also just kind of wonder, okay, you have the primary and the secondary creation to get Wemby more of those paint touches that everybody wants to see, those on the move paint touches. But do you have the spacing yet to do that? Because he is part of what's important. I know people get frustrated by shot selection sometime, and I know he has some of those just, YOLO threes, let's call them. They're almost a necessity to open the floor for the Spurs offense at this point, and I just don't know if they've done enough to change that. And so I still have a lot of questions about their offensive ceiling, just because you're also talking about Fox is a veteran. So it's just, okay, you lose CP3, I think the turnovers will still be fine, whatever. But like integrating Dylan Harper specifically, whether he's running the second unit or you want him on the ball in like primary lineup minutes with Wemby and Steph Cass, things could get really rough. And so I would expect this team, if Wemby's going to be available the entire year, like they're going to be in the 40s, I would think, of the wins total. But like anyone kind of expecting this to be their formal entry into fringe contention, I would pump the brakes. I love when I go negative, I love to be proven wrong. I want to make that clear. So I'm sure people are already mad if they're Spurs fans, mad in the comments. I still have questions about this team, which I kind of think it's fair when it's year 3 of Wemby, year 2 of Castle, and year 1 of Dylan Harper.
And look, those are perfectly reasonable arguments. At the end of the day, for me, it's really the fact that they have so much rim pressure now at the guard spot, where we know the Spurs have just been excellent when they haven't had a lot of floor spacing and then getting to the rim, generating good shots near the rim at the mid-range area. Like they know how to get 2-pointers. It's kind of my point here. And they know how to get efficient looks at 2-pointers. So for them to have both Fox, who can really push the tempo, now Dylan Harper, who is, I don't want to go into the James Harden comparisons, but like physically he's similar to James in the sense that broad shoulders, a lot of strength, can really get people to bounce off of him instead of him bouncing off of other players. I just think that component of having that downhill segment is just going to unleash Wemby in a role that we have not yet seen.
This is going to be an interesting one to track. We'll have to put a pin in it to see
that's
who makes out closer. So I was going to go negative and alternate, but I kind of did just go negative as your counterpoint to the Spurs. So I'll go positive again. They've sucked me in again. I said this last year. The Charlotte Hornets. I think that people are too quick to just, they're going to be like one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the East. I won't, again, this is not something I'm going to roll out, but I would just like to point. We're going to start with LaMelo Ball, Mort. I know your favorite player in the NBA.
Right.
Past 3 seasons, here's where his teammates have ranked in three-point efficiency. Last year, the 22nd percentile. The year before that, the 17th percentile. The year before that, the 1st percentile. That's all per B-ball index. Now, you look at the other thing that I don't think gets talked about enough when it comes to help is, Melo's taking too many shots. He's on the ball too much. Who else you want on the ball in Charlotte?
Right.
His teammates' on-ball gravity for his career, so the past 5 seasons, his teammates have never ranked higher than the 33rd percentile in just on-ball gravity, on-ball creation. That as well. Like those 2 separate things. That is insane. And so you know what the Hornets go out and do this summer? Yeah, it probably came at the expense of defense, but they trade for Colin Sexton in a deal that I still don't understand. For conventional wisdom suggests that if you're the team giving up the worst player on the worst contract, you should include a pick. The Hornets got a pick.
Right.
Kudos to Jeff Peterson and co. They draft Con Knippel. They draft Liam McNeely. Brandon Miller is going to be healthier, and whether you want to see him, they put him on the ball more last year. I think he showed stuff as a passer. The turnovers got a little egregious, but now he'll be year 3. Hopefully he's healthier. He'll be working with better spacing. Or, you know what they could maybe do for him? Get him moving downhill off the ball more frequently so that he can get to the rim, draw some fouls, might be a strength thing. Yeah, there's questions at the center position. They're not, like, their best wing, aside from Brandon Miller, is, like, wing defensively, I mean, because Knippel and McNeely have the size of wings, which I also feel like doesn't get talked about enough. People keep calling them, like, these 2 guards, and they're 6'7". Like, they got real size.
Yeah, they got him, yeah.
But, like, it might be Josh Green, and that's not okay, I would argue. He was fine last year. He's also injured right now, so we're probably going to see, I would assume, Knippel start to begin the... I really wish I feel like I would sound so much smarter about the Hornets because I'm recording the Hornets look ahead like 24 hours after we record this. I'd sound so much smarter if I'd already recorded it. Shout out in advance to Kanata Edwards. So I'm looking at this team. Yeah, they over-indexed maybe on offense and guards, but like if LaMelo stays healthy and you're just giving him room to work to where his efficiency improves, you'll see his decision-making on offense improve, maybe his assist rate or assist-to-turnover rate or assist-to-usage rate, however you want to frame it, is going to go up in the right direction. This is a team that Brandon Miller, if you're high on Brandon Miller, I'm not saying he needs to be an all-star this season, but if you're high on Brandon Miller, why wouldn't he get better? Like, what is the argument against Brandon Miller getting better? So I have defensive questions about this.
There isn't one. Yeah.
Right. No. And even on defense, look, the center stuff, I like Diabate. The offensive rebounding is good. I think he's made some strides as a rim protector. I think he'll be a better finisher now that there's more ball handlers and spacing around him too. I do have questions about the defense, but Charles Lee has also already implemented a system that did a good job dissuading looks at the rim with, like, the personnel last year was, like, you're not looking at, they didn't have Grant Williams. That you look at the center position wasn't exactly, they had Mark Williams for a good chunk of the year, but he's no just, like, defensive, like, stopper. So I'm not saying they'll get better defensively, but, like, I don't know how much worse they're actually going to get defensively if they get worse at all. So I kind of like this team. I don't know what their upper end outcome would be, but I've seen a lot of just, they're going to be one of the 3 worst teams in the East. And I'm kind of like, if they might win enough to be like 8, 7, maybe 6. So I'm keeping my eye on the Hornets. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, I would say their ceiling is probably like 6 or 7. And that I think is a higher ceiling than people are giving them credit for.
But we agreed that ceiling means that everything has to go right. Right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I get if your argument, not yours specifically, is LaMelo's going to play in 40 games and Brandon Miller's going to get he's not going to play in 65 and the center like I don't have a great argument against that, but if this team is going to be any semblance of healthier, like Trey Mann coming back from the neck injury, Grant Williams will help them if they want to switch more on defense. Should he be healthier, like coming off that ACL injury? Like, this is a team that I would almost say if they're healthy and they win fewer than like 35, 37 games, I'd be pretty surprised.
Okay. Interesting. All right. I mean, look, I know you've been optimistic about them. I respect that, just as you respect me being optimistic about the Spurs.
Yours is easier to justify though, just because the Spurs have Wemby and the Hornets don't.
I was about to say that, but in a nicer way. But yes, I do see your point though. Like, I'm not personally that high on Concanible yet. I need to see a little bit more of him before I'm like at the NBA level, not summer league level, before I'm like fully confident.
I was impressed with him and McNeely, and this is coming from someone who just doesn't follow college. The level of just playmaking from the two of them that you could see in summer league, that really turned my head.
Yeah, and they do have that. I just wonder when the competition gets significantly tougher, whether they still have that advantage. If they do, a lot of my concerns just remove themselves from the table immediately. I do also think that if they somehow find a way to just take Miles Bridges off the roster, and I'm not only speaking on as a human being, because there's that element, of course. I also just don't think he's a good basketball player in terms of like an influentially positive basketball player. He scores a lot, and that's basically what he does. He takes up a lot of shots within the offense.
On so efficiency at best.
On so efficiency. Like, to me, these Hornets would be so much more interesting if you took his role away, or just him away, and spread out those responsibilities to like a series of different players. So like, you almost hope that if there is an injury out there, that it's not going to be LaMelo or Brandon Miller, that it's going to be Miles Bridges. And Mort, did you just wish injury upon a player? For that guy specifically, I have no issue doing that. Yeah.
You also didn't. You just said, you basically were just boiling it down to, if a team needs to miss a player, you would prefer it be Miles Bridges than LaMelo Ball or Brandon Miller, which is just, that's stating
fair.
a fact.
They're
more important to this team.
Fair.
Who's your next team? And I'm assuming you're going to go with a disappointment here.
A little bit of a disappointment. I just have to go with the Warriors at this point, and I understand that we still haven't gotten a resolution to the Jonathan Kuminga situation. I understand that. But the lag of spacing so far is problematic in my view. We are looking at a team where Steph just has to carry so much more responsibility as, just gravity-wise, that when you look at this squad and look at his age, you're just sort of setting you're setting yourself up potentially for disappointment, and potentially also to just put him in a situation where he's overtaxed physically. And you don't want to do that, especially at this stage of his career. Like, Jimmy is not a natural shooter. Draymond is not a natural shooter. They're going to have to play a lot of minutes together. Defensively, they're tremendous. I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't positives. Obviously, there are. But in today's league, you just need to have that floor spacing capability. Where is that going to come from? Even if they retain Jonathan Kuminga, that's not going to help them in the spacing front. Like, what is your plan here? Play Buddy Hield 35 minutes per game? Like, Al Horford presumably is going to come in. He can help in that department, but that's not necessarily high volume. Anthony Melton, we have no idea whether he's like fully healthy and back to his normal shooting capabilities. Like, those are, for me, a little bit larger question marks. Now, I'm not saying this can't go right, but it does feel like, like I said before, everything has to go right for me to like believe in them. The talent is there, but is that talent, like, does that fit alongside each other? That's basically my big ass question.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know what to make of this team, even if we assume Kuminga's back and they get Horford and Melton. They've been linked to Brogdon, speaking of players that have health issues. They're tantalizing because having Jimmy Butler gives you this lifeline during the non-Steph minutes that they've never, even with Durant, because of, like, as a playmaker and as someone who gets downhill and puts pressure on the rim, that they didn't even have during that era necessarily. But they're also old. And so it's someone gonna, like, that gives you like pause. And then we've just seen a lot of the players that they're relying on, including if Jonathan Kuminga's back, or if it is a Buddy Hield, or if it is a Brandon Pajemski, they all just sort of wax and wane. Like, their best constant is Quentin Post. Like, that is the guy that you know is going to be there day in and day out and giving you all-star caliber play. Just catching to see if you were listening, but it's also just a true fact.
I am listening. I love Quentin Post. I don't.
Well, he's a little too important though, in the sense of because you need that floor spacing around the Draymond, Jimmy Butler, and if Jonathan Kuminga's peppered in there, do you want to be that reliant on Quentin Post, or even do you want to say, I love Al Horford, that'll be a fantastic signing should it go through? Do you want to be that reliant on Quentin Post and Al Horford? I think to me, I still view spacing at the center position, or I'll say like floor spacing because there's vertical spacing with screens, of course.
Right.
I still view it as something that should be more of a luxury, or like it shouldn't be as much of a necessity as it feels like for the Warriors right now. When it's Milwaukee and you're playing with Giannis, okay, I kind of get it. But at the same time, like that's one of the knocks, again, not knocks, but concerns with rebuilding around Giannis is, no, you need that type of a five around him. And now you put yourself in a situation where whether you have Kuminga or not, right now, you almost need that type of a five. So what if Quentin Post progress isn't linear? What if he kind of has a down sophomore year? Or what if the defense, like he had some good straight up, like he's in the right spots around the basket for the most part. But what if teams like really just mutilate him on that end this year? What if Al Horford starts to show his age? So yeah, I could see where you're going with it. I think I'm just so like on the mid end with them towards, they'll be 5th or 6th or 7th in the West, that it's hard for me. I don't think that their floor or their ceiling is much higher, but I think I could see your case of, okay, this floor might be a lot lower than even people are expecting.
Right, because I didn't even specify where I think they could drop down. I think they could drop out of 10.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm
not saying they will. Don't worry. Don't kill me, Warriors fans. I know there are millions of you after Steph arrived. I know. Don't worry. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying, like, there is a world wherein the spacing is just completely messed up, where it's injuries galore because of age, and things just look horrible, and they're just outside the entire playing picture.
I mean, so you're saying they could be worse than one of the Suns, Pelicans, Jazz, and Kings?
Right. Again, I will say injuries would have to factor in here. Like, if they're healthy, they'll find a way to be relevant, right? I mean, it's Steph, it's Jimmy, it's Draymond. Like, come on. Like, but it's the ages, though. Like, Steph is, 37? He's going to be 38 during the end of the regular season. Like, that. Let's not sit here and say that you can defy Father Time. We're even seeing with LeBron, even though he took it to the limit, it's getting there. It's getting to be that time. That's going to be applicable to Steph as well. It's going to be applicable to Jimmy, to Draymond. And Jimmy, by the way, if memory serves, he's begun like missing a few games here and there. Like he's not the Iron Man that he used to be.
Yeah, he's always dealing with stuff, and he's selectively Jimmy now. To where postseason Jimmy became like this mythic figure, but he actually existed, and now it's sort of like postseason Jimmy might exist because regular season Jimmy is way more selective than he was, let's say 3 years ago. Which, by the way, sure, if that's gonna keep you like close to performing close to your peak during the most important time of the year, then I get it. But do they have the cushion? Like, I think it's they have real depth on this roster, but is it depth that can navigate in absence from? Because so I'll ask you this: are they in a situation to where they could lose, like Draymond or Jimmy could miss time, and you still think they would be screwed, or do you still view them as a team? Because you're probably more confident in them if you say, yeah, if Steph misses time, like the whole thing is just fucked. And surprise, surprise, like that's been true for how many years now. But if you think they're at a point where it's like, I don't even know if Steph could uplift this roster if you pull Draymond or Jimmy off of it for a few weeks, that's where it becomes really problematic.
No, and that's where I'm at because I just can't. Maybe he can, right? But I don't think that would be a fair expectation from my perspective. Like, I don't think that's reasonable to go into a season and telling a 37-year-old Steph, hey, look, Jimmy Butler is out for the next month. Can you just go utter ape shit again like you used to and just average 35 and hit like 6 threes per game? Can you just do that for us? No, I think that is such a preposterous ask. And because he also needs, like we were talking about the Spurs and Wemby needing like downhill action. There's no question that when there is downhill action, like when Draymond turns on the Jets, which he can't really do, to the same extent as he used to, but when he just pushed the ball and Steph found those gaps, especially in transition, he was just so freaking terrifying. Like, who's going to be that guy? Who is going to be the guy that Steph can also play off of? Because he does need that on occasion. If you're not having Jimmy around and Draymond is looking old, what? Then do you expect to just say, snap your fingers, and then Steph will go back to being 26 again? It doesn't work like that. So,
man, imagine if it did, though.
Oh, that'd be a cheat one. I mean, could you imagine if you could do that to a whole roster and like selectively go into the prime years of each guy? Prime Draymond, prime Jimmy, prime Steph.
Do you know how good the Clippers would be?
Oh, like they would cruise to a title. They would cruise to a title. Like, could you imagine the Spurs just basically doing the opposite and just accelerating Wemby to like year 7 Wemby?
I haven't even given thought. This isn't the Wemby segment, but I don't even think I've given enough thought to, okay, well, what does Victor Wembanyama look like in his prime?
I've spent way too much time thinking about it, and I think it's going to be preposterous. But no, look, I'm not predicting that the Warriors will, drop out of 10th seed. I'm just saying that there is a world wherein the perfect storm hits and everything just goes bad.
It does feel, I haven't given them a lot of crap. I've shown some skepticism for the Clippers, but the Warriors almost feel like their floor is lower than, like, the Clippers to me have a higher floor than the Warriors probably, because they're still just top heavy. Or you're saying JK or Brandon Pajimski is really going to caps lock pop, which is just, that's harder than like looking at the Clippers cast of veterans and thinking they can navigate an injury to Kawhi or James Harden slipping or Bradley Beal not panning out. So yeah, I don't know that I would, like we said, we're not predicting things. I want to remind people at this point, but that's definitely a team to keep an eye on. Are we ready to move on?
We are. I just want to mention one last thing, and I know it's sacrilegious to just mention that Steph is trying to drop off, but have you also seen like his production level over the past 2 years? Like I think it is fair to say that we are beginning to see the not hastened decline at all, because quite the opposite, the slow, very gracious decline of Stephen Curry. I think we're approached it.
So we need to spend a second on that, because I think it's fair to say that, but I've come to look at it like this, is what is the current version of Steph Curry in today's NBA? Is he still one of the 10 to 15 best players?
Yeah, yes, still, yes.
Then I think that's honestly all that matters. There's a difference between, okay, we can't say that he's one of the top 5, but like, I don't want to say he exited that territory a while ago, but we've been talking about in any given season, Tatum and Embiid, Jokic, Giannis, Luka Doncic as all being in that. So him and LeBron have been on the fringes. Like Kevin Durant's, of course, been in there too. So I agree with what you're saying, and it diminishes your margin for error. But even Steph Curry at 75, 80% of Steph Curry from 2 years ago. Okay. So, but yes, it's of course something to track. And spoiler alert, someone in their late 30s isn't as good as they were in their early 30s.
I just wanted to say it because I know there's going to be pushback on it by Warriors fans, and I understand that, because look, how do you not fall in love with Steph Curry if you're a Dubs fan over the course of like these 16 years? How do you not do that? Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, his scoring per minute has dipped in each of the past 2 years, so that would be something to monitor. But I mean, just 40% on 12.5 threes per 36 minutes.
He's still ridiculous. Yeah, he's still ridiculous.
And do you know where I think he's probably inoculated against any individual drop-off is that defenses will always guard him like a 5-alarm fire, so he is propping up your team even if he's not scoring or on the ball or touching
just
it,
in the corner.
For that matter.
Just in the corner, he's providing value.
Okay, I didn't want to go here, and I just want to make it clear that it's relative to expectations. I think this team could disappoint. It's the New York Knicks. Here's my thing. They're one of only, I think, 5 teams that are predicted when you're looking at the win totals to have over 53 wins. They are good, but there are a couple things that I think we need to consider.
Oh, can I guess one? Can I guess one of your points?
Go ahead.
Karl Anthony Towns and the lack of rim defense.
Oh no, I mean, like that's a point, but it's not one of my primary things.
Oh, interesting. Okay. No, you've been harping on that a lot this summer, so I was just wondering if you would go down
Well, so
that road.
what I would harp on it. Well, I guess it's a tangential point, but let me get the quick one out of the way first.
Okay, cool.
I like the signings that they've made,
Mhm.
but like Gershon Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson are not sixth man of the year candidates right now. I guess
Correct.
maybe you could envision a world where Yabusele comes in and does it, but there's the shooting I kind of buy into, and they needed a 4. If you're trying to play him at the 5 at all, I don't know what that looks like defensively. And if you're not trying to play him at the 5 and you want to start dual big, you're playing a lot of Ariel Huckporty at that point, which I'm fine, but this team hasn't necessarily shown a commitment to development. That does bring me to my next point, which, and I guess this is Karl-Anthony Towns related, but I think a lot of people expect them to start Karl-Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson. We saw promising moments of that in the playoffs last year. We also saw there was a game, I think it was against the Raptors. Cat and Huckporty were playing together and they were killing it, but that was also the Raptors and it was a very small sample size. Karl-Anthony Towns, and this, of course, was one of the biggest problems people had with Tibbs. Mitchell Robinson, with the starters, played in place of Hart, played 67 minutes across the regular season and playoffs last year. That's not a large enough sample size to go off of good or bad. And by the way, it wasn't really good or bad in net. They were a -1 in those minutes. So almost a net neutral. But what you're doing by playing Mitchell Robinson next to Karl-Anthony Towns is saying, we have completely punted on this idea of being a 5-out team for a majority of the game. And now you've either punted on this for one of two reasons. You don't think you actually have the personnel to do it because Josh Hart makes you play, okay, you can play 5-out lineups, but it's really more like, 4.5, 4.25 out at that point. Or you're saying, we need Karl-Anthony Towns to play alongside another center, in which case paying Karl-Anthony Towns so much money is inherently problematic. So yes, that part can come back to Karl-Anthony Towns. Now, if you told me the Knicks were going to start Deuce McBride instead, I think that lineup has far more potential just from a higher end perspective because Deuce McBride, better point of attack defender than Mikal Bridges. So now Mikal Bridges trickles down. He's playing more of his ideal role on defense. You do get 5-out spacing because that's what Deuce McBride does, is take threes. But then you have Mitchell Robinson and Josh Hart both coming off the same bench. What does the spacing look like there? And if you don't believe in Gershon Yabusele's shooting just yet, tons of question marks.
Oh, well, you should. You should buy into that shooting. Can we just...
I'm saying I buy into it, but it's not like he's coming in and taking what? If he's playing, first of all, how many minutes per game is he playing? This is someone who averaged about 5 attempts per 36 minutes last year, right? Yabusele?
Right.
That's not an astronomical rate. And I think that defenses are still, like, if he's your fit, just as someone with to the antidote to a Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson lineup, Gershon Yabusele does not have the gravity to change that.
No, well, the thing is, because this isn't at you, but I've seen, like, the shooting counter arguments for Yabusele, like, oh, like, can he really come in and be an NBA shooter? Like, he was only pedestrian when he was in Boston. And people are just completely ignoring how elite of a shooter he was at Real Madrid, for example. Like, he's been a strong-ass shooter for, like, 5 years now. So I just wanted to make sure that people are aware that this isn't a guy who's just going to have, like, a lucky few weeks where he hits, like, 45% from downtown. The guy is a tremendous shooter. And I think the best part about it is if he gets enough confidence from the coaching staff, he's a guy who can actually ramp it up. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens, but I would not be in any way, shape, or form nervous about a more high-volume version of Yabu.
I think he's a good signing. I actually think that he'll probably end up playing fewer minutes for the Knicks than he did with the Sixers when you look at how their front court is popular. I mean, maybe an injury happens, but you also can't, like, if you play him and Towns together, that's 5 out. I don't know what the defense looks like in those instances either.
That's a lot of offense. I wouldn't hate it.
They're going to try it, for sure. The other thing, too, is I like Mike Brown from the perspective of more things should be happening off the ball. He's already kind of hinted at using Jalen Brunson in different ways, and I'm a firm believer that Jalen Brunson can be used in different ways.
Agreed.
But we can't pretend that the Knicks have another high-level creator on their team. Karl-Anthony Towns is too inconsistent, hasn't shown enough live dribble playmaking. The tunnel vision he gets on drives is just like a career-long epidemic for him.
That's fair, yes.
Mikal Bridges has never really been that guy. Maybe he has another level to get to. We will see. It's not OG Anunoby. That's not Deuce McBride's role. I've seen people call Jordan Clarkson a wing.
No.
He's not a wing, but he's also not a floor general. Like, he did improve. I thought he had nice moments, or at least ratcheted up the passing in Utah. Didn't really have another choice, but he's not someone you look at and think that you're comfortable him driving the offense. And I think the Knicks, as we're recording this, trying to target a guard, like they've been interested in Ben Simmons. They've been linked to Brogdon. They've also been linked to Beasley, and they've been linked to other guys too. It does kind of feel telltale that they believe, whether it's Landry Shamet coming in or Beasley or Brogdon, they don't think Tyler Kolek is going to be the answer there either. And so are they really built to make Jalen Brunson's workload lighter? Because this is someone who's ranked in the 95th percentile or higher in his 3 years with the Knicks of true usage, all while logging 2,000 minutes or more per season. The other players to do that, Mort, in the same 3-year span: Giannis, Jokic, Shea, Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
You can look at that and say, well, this is a testament to Jalen Brunson's skill and durability. It absolutely is. None of those other guys, with the exception of Damian Lillard, who's also a little bit taller than Jalen Brunson, but look at how Damian Lillard's body held up. We're talking about a smaller guard here. I know he took on a higher volume role later, but you want to get to a point where you could say Jalen Brunson will be at the peak in the playoffs, which he has been. But also, we want Jalen Brunson to be peak Jalen Brunson 2-3 years down the line still. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. I'm open to the idea that they could be better, that this will be a team that is more capable of winning 3 to 4 playoff series. But I kind of think we're penciling them in as, they're easily no worse than 2 in the East. When my final part of this point is, I didn't pick them as a team that could surprise because I think people are high on both of these squads. The Hawks and the Magic are right there. There's a chance, the Sixers, you don't want to predict they'd be a surprise, but if they get any semblance of health, that's a team that could factor in. Yep. Miami, I don't know that I'm in love with the roster, but they're really deep now. I still don't understand the Haywood Highsmith trade. Yes, Boston and Indiana will be missing their best players. Milwaukee has Giannis, Turner, and a bunch of guys. Basically, that might be enough to make a ruckus in the East. So I think the Knicks are going to end up being one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the East. That's how I would predict it. Mm-hmm. But if we're trying to think that between firing Thibodeau and going to Mike Brown and then signing Yabusele and Clarkson and deepening your rotation to a guaranteed 9 players, that's good. Mm-hmm. I'm put a pin in it. That's all. Let's put another pin in it. I'm not saying they'll be worse, but I don't know that they're going to be much better than they were last year.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. So to your point about using Brunson off ball a little bit more, you don't think Josh Hart could come in and take on the on ball reps in those situations?
With Jalen Brunson on the court, I don't really love that. It's as a member of the second unit, maybe, and sure you can do that with Jalen Brunson, but I'm talking more about Josh Hart to me is more like a full speed creator, and they need someone who's going to be better at breaking down a half court offense.
Like a half court guy.
The other thing with Josh Hart too is that if in those minutes you're playing him with Mitchell Robinson, statistically his rim pressure falls off a cliff. That's Karl-Anthony Towns is really important to Josh Hart. So that's another trade-off, by the way, that you make of having Josh Hart come off the bench. Now, yes, staggering patterns, what have you, all that. I get it. You could still game it. This team just still has a couple of distinct question marks, if not flaws. And so I could see us looking back and saying, I think the Athletics poll said that the vast majority of Knicks fans believe they need to win the conference finals for next season to be a success. And if they're kind of getting to the NBA finals or bust, let's say, there's a lot of talent in the East to where if they lost in the first or second round, that's not going to, as of right now, I need to see what happens on the court, of course. As of right now, I don't think that that's a preposterous thing to wonder.
No, I don't think so either. I think that's fair. I think that's very fair.
Did you have any other teams that you wanted to mention?
No, I think I went through 3.
Miami could deserve an honorable, but they're just so deep. I don't know what the offense is necessarily going to look like and how much are they playing Pele Larson or Kasparis Yakachionis. I don't know what the youth investment's going to be. Don't love the Highsmith trade, but Norman Powell, people have already applauded the acquisition, but that dude gives you rim pressure and is going to open up the floor, make life easier on Tyler Hero. But their center rotation is like, or are we just going to burn out Bam Adebayo now? Is that the end game here?
There.
So
yeah.
no,
it's fine. It's fine. Like their depth is fine, but I still find the team overall pretty unspectacular. I gotta admit. I wonder.
Is there was there another team you considered mentioning as a surprise or a disappointment?
Well, see, I thought about Dallas, and then I realized I have no freaking idea where they're going up and down. So I thought that wouldn't be fair because like you could basically point them in every which direction.
I think the Kings could surprise some people and maybe not move heaven and earth to make sure that Russell Westbrook is signed. I think that could be like real surprise that could happen there. Mort, this was fun. And it was kind of cool limiting it to 3 teams because I had other tough cuts. And it's just, I was happy you picked the Spurs, but then I was a little sad because you picked the opposite end of the spectrum, but I still didn't need to burn a pick on them. But that's why this was fun limiting it to 3 teams. Are you able just to tell everyone where they could find you and all the fantastic work that you do?
Yes, sir. You can find me over at Yahoo Sports, over at Forbes, at the NBA podcast, and if you speak Danish, buzzer beater.
Until next time, and as always, we leave with a shout out to the one, the only, the indelible, the real surprise MVP candidate of the season once he finds an NBA team, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.